Hey girls, welcome to Gem Girls Talk, a sisterhood podcast where we dive headfirst into all things teen girls. I'm Melody, the founder of Gem Girls, a sisterhood blog and podcast ministry.
Hey friends, I'm Elizabeth, and I've been with Gem Girls since the beginning, and I love being part of this ministry where I can help other girls grow closer to Jesus.
So joining us today is Jennifer Raynow, a lover of nature, making connections, and spending time with people. She's worked in children's ministry and has had various teaching jobs. She's a really good friend of mine, and I'm so happy that she could join us today.
Yes, I'm excited to be on this podcast. It's my first time joining a podcast, and so I'm really excited. I was really excited to hear about the Gem Girls. And I love working with kids. I love working with people in general. Worked with all sorts of ages, from little toddlers to teenagers to older people. And I myself, and not that much older, but a young person myself too. But yeah, I just love people, and I love sharing Jesus with them.
So we've got a couple of questions from different Gem Girls. And our first question that we're going to start off with is kind of a deep question. And it's, how can I find the purpose for my life? Does God really have a plan for me?
Wow, yeah, you definitely took us on the deep end. How can I find purpose for my life? Does God really have a plan for me? You know, I love this verse, Jeremiah 29:11. Think about it in context of yourself. God always speaks to us personally. It says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." And in some translations, it says, to give you a future and a hope. So God really is a personal God. That's one thing I've learned in my walk with him, is that he knows each of us are individuals. God does have a purpose for our life, and he does want to help us find that plan. Sometimes he allows us to dig deep for it, and sometimes he'll just show it to us in a very clear way. But he's also promised later on in that same passage that if you seek me, you will find me if you search for me with all of your heart. So yeah, God definitely does have a plan for us. How would you say God's defined that for you, Melody?
I've definitely seen God working in my life. There's definitely been a theme in terms of God's promises have definitely proven to be true. And I've always had a sense of purpose in terms of what I wanted to do. And I always had a plan. I was very much a planner. I've always been ever since I was little. And I think I was about 13. I came to realize that God had a plan for me. One of our recent posts, it's called I Will. And it's based on Psalms 32, verse 8. To me, it's just been such a blessing, such a promise, because, you know, God says, I will guide you in the best pathway for your life. I will advise you. I will watch over you. And for me, that's just been such an encouragement, because knowing that God will guide me on the best pathway for my life takes away all my fears, takes away all my doubts, and just gives me the reassurance that God knows what the best pathway is, and he promises that he will take me down that if I will let. So that's just really been a blessing to me.
Amen. You know, it's kind of funny this is a question that's asked because recently in my life, I'm at that place where I know God's leading me to that. He's always got steps for us. And it's easy to be kind of live in autopilot or in neutral and just kind of let life happen. But God has called us to live intentionally and to aim for things, to have goals. I mean, he's designed us with that inside of our hearts and within our longing and our desire. We should reach for something. And so I'm like, Lord, how can I know is this the right way? Is this the right path? And even though I have seen him walk in my life and he showed me time after time that what his will is, it usually came from a lot of prayer and surrender. So surrender of my own desires and preconceived ideas. That's a huge one. When you have your own preconceived ideas in your head, you can't hear anything else. And everything, it's like a filter. Any information that comes into your mind is going to be put through that filter. And so even if it may not be according to your preconceived ideas, you're going to warp it and twist it so that way it fits. It's like trying to put together a puzzle and try to just make a piece fit. It doesn't work. And so oftentimes when we try to do that, we end up feeling like this failed, or I thought God was leading and all these things. It's like, well, no, it's just that God's had to step back and say, I'll let you have your own course. Because you really didn't want me guiding. You wanted your own will and way. So God showed me that in my life that I have to let go of my preconceived ideas. I have to be willing to hear his voice. And then he's going to show it to me. So I've been reading a lot in Proverbs and seeking his will in those next steps of my life. And I love the one that says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. This is Proverbs chapter 3. And lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So it's that same principle. Go back to God. Trust in him. Don't lean on your own understanding. Put that away. You just set it aside and let yourself hear, what does God's word say to you? What is his principles? What is his heart saying? And if you acknowledge him and speak to him every step of the way, you're going to hear his voice and guidance. A good question is, I want to know how a relationship with God can be stronger. We can always ask ourselves, no matter where we are in our walk with God, is, Lord, how can I make this go deeper? That's one thing I'm learning in relationships, whether it's friendships with family or family friend relationships or friendships outside the home, is that relationships grow as we cultivate them. It's the same with God. It grows as we cultivate it. If we don't cultivate it, it's not going to grow. I mean, it's that simple. The principle is really easy. Jesus says that we will reap what we sow. The same thing applies with our relationship with God. So how can we make it grow stronger? How can I accomplish this? First of all, what I found is evaluate where I'm at my time with God in that moment. What does my devotion time look like? Is it a ceremony? Is it just a check off? Like, oh, I just need to just get this done. Or am I actually pursuing the heart of God? One thing I found that really helps is asking God questions. Like, Lord, how do you feel about this? Or, just thinking about his responses in his word, looking for his characteristics and how he acted in certain scenarios, and just pulling back and now imagining what it'd be like to be in his place in that situation. Like, I started going through Genesis, and I was reading through Genesis while reading through Patriarchs and Prophets. And I was wanting to see the character of God through each of the stories, no matter how hard the story was, no matter whether or not it made sense in the moment. And, I started making a tally of all the things about God's character. I was just so attracted. And the more I dwelt on that, the closer my relationship got with him. Like, I wanted to be with him. I wanted to connect with him because I'm seeing him as a real being. He's so real to my life.
Yeah, that kind of also goes with this next thing. God is such a personal God, and he really cares about every part of our lives. And the next question is, why do I need to follow my parents' rules? They're just not fair. Sometimes I think we see things, just like you said before, we see things through our own sort of box. So everything is inside this box. It has to be in our little mindset. And we have these preconceived ideas of how everything is. God gave us parents for a reason. Instead of us having this sort of defensive attitude of, you don't understand, you don't know me, you don't get it, we can sort of have more of an open mind. And, not just, oh, well, whatever they say, I will do, kind of just don't even think about it. But, we do need a process. We're at an age where we are thinking for ourselves. We are starting to think about everything that we're told to do from, okay, well, why? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? And so, having this relationship with God can help us relate to people in our lives. So whether it be our parents, whether it be our friends, whether it be our siblings, because I know siblings is a hard thing too. Parents, siblings, family, just in general, because we live with them. We know them really well. They know us really well. And so it's hard to cultivate that relationship because sometimes I feel like we're being invaded.
I guess goes back to like what you're saying about changing the mindset when realizing that parents are there for a reason. So what was God's purpose in allowing there to be parents who make rules in our life, And that's maybe it's a little bit of a deeper question. And God gives illustrations. He's definitely a teacher, a master teacher. And he likes to use different mediums to illustrate different lessons. And that's why he created a man and a woman. So let us make man in our image and after our likeness. He wanted to display himself in a way that could be understood. And so he created humanity, and he also created the family. He created a mom and a dad and children. He wanted to convey a lesson to us. And yeah, we live in a sinful world, so our parents, yeah, they're human. We're human. We make mistakes. They make mistakes. I think the most eye-opening thing for me was realizing that my parents weren't perfect, and that was okay because God has grace for them. Just like I need grace, they need grace. And having that forgiveness for parents is so huge, and allowing them to grow because they're growing too, right along with us. You know, the verses that say, like, children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well pleasing unto the Lord. Honor thy father and mother, that the days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Rules and boundaries are the ones that are set in our home from childhood, and they're teaching us authority and respect. And that is a lesson that even if the rules maybe don't make sense, if you can learn to respect authority by keeping those rules, that is priceless. Because that respect is going to be carried into your relationship with God. And so I noticed that in my own walk is that, like how you said it too, how when you get to know God, it changes that perspective of everything. And that's true. I saw that when I got to know God. I realized I was treating him the same way I was treating my parents, which is very disrespectful or usually rebelling or distant. Say I had to stand before the creator of the universe today, and I had to stand in all his glory before me and my sinfulness. And I'm like, I don't think I could do that. And then realizing that he requires something of me, it's not because he's trying to be arbitrary or mean, it's because he can see something I can't. So it's a kind of a loaded question, but definitely just learn the principle of respecting that authority figure in your life. You're going to need it in life. You're going to need it when you go to work. And I think that's really something that's really broken down in our society nowadays is the respect for authority. And if we can bring that back as young people, as young women especially, that's something that can be really beautiful when done right. In this verse 2 in Colossians where it's talking about servants and how they're supposed to obey their masters. I mean, that's hard enough. You think of being a servant. Being a kid is hard, but imagine being a servant. But Paul tells them to do their work not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord you shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. So remembering too that everything we do, is it for self? Is it for this person to please them? Or is it for God? If we're doing everything for God, it doesn't matter whether or not we really think the rule is fair or whatever. Do it with singleness of heart to the glory of God. Go the extra mile. And you'll know that in God's eyes, your reward is going to be great because he does not forget any of those details. He sees that your character is being transformed through that process. Where I live right now, there's not a lot of people my age or a lot of people who are maybe exactly like-minded, not everybody's really exactly like-minded, but really like-minded in the sense of mission is number one, seeking God's kingdom is number one, and loving God and all that. And I have a lot of friends who aren't Adventist, who are non-Christian, or even if they are Adventist, they're really just not focused. I found that it was really affecting my walk with God because of the influence I had around me. When I see you're my friend, I want you to just know that you're welcome, you're family, you're close, no matter whether or not you're Adventist. I mean, I just want you to feel like this is part of your home. But I realized as I opened up to these friends in ways that I would have, just left me really vulnerable with these friends who maybe aren't seeing eye to eye. They're not lifting me up to the Lord, and it started to bring me down. And then being able to be around other people recently who are on fire for God, who have that mission mindset, I realized, wow, it does affect really our whole being. I didn't realize how strong of an influence our friends can really have on our walk with God because I had not really experienced it too much. But I'm like, wow, it is a huge difference. So I was even praying, like, Lord, I would like to have, friends who are nearby because it's different when you have phone to text. That's awesome. But having someone who's face to face is so much different. I would encourage you, if you do have people close to you, Let them be people who are going to lift you up to God. If that's where you want to be, keep those people around you. And then you can let that circle kind of rings around that circle. It can be those who maybe aren't going to hold as close. You're not going to share all those intimate things with. You're not going to be as open about your spiritual struggles with, but you can still have them close. I mean, they can maybe not be on the same level as you. That's fine. Because you can reach them. You can still love them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's very important because iron sharpens iron. So
Yeah.
if someone is dull, we're going to be dulled. And in terms of their spirituality and their walk with God, if they're not going that direction, they're going to try to drag us backwards with them. And, may not be intentional. We are called to be friendly to everyone. And it's good to have friends that aren't, Christian, that aren't Adventist, because we can be a witness to them. But there's different levels of trust. There's different levels of confidence. The people that I'm going to let into my circle, in terms of the people that will mold me and shape me and sharpen me to be a better instrument in God's hands, they have to be people that are going the same way I am, that are listening to God's voice, that are wanting to do what he says.
Another thing, too, I've noticed is allow variety in friendships, because I think we often focus on, we want someone who's going to encourage us on the same page spiritually, and that's perfect. When it comes to characteristics, age, experience, allow there to be variety, because we can get in a rut too and just be hanging out with people who are exactly like us in personality, who are about the same age as us, who have about the same amount of experience as us. And that doesn't sharpen us either, because now we're all on the same level and we're just kind of plateauing. So like some of my closest friends are in their 30s, late 30s, and I'm 22. And then I have some really close friends who are way younger than me, like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And I can connect with all those ages. And then I have ones who are a lot older than me, who are like 70s. And I just love talking to them, connecting them as a friend. And their experience, their personality. Like one of my closest friends is my mom. And she has such a vibrant personality. And just the way she sees things is very creative. I'm more analytical. And she challenges me to think differently. And I love that. Having people in my life who can challenge me to think outside the box or think in a different perspective is so healthy. So I think that aspect we need to consider too when we're choosing our friends. Are they just like us in every single way? The main thing that's important to have in common is your relationship with God. Is God number one? And then after that, just leave room for variety. Allow yourself to be challenged.
Having that place where you can be challenged is such a beautiful thing in life, because we're always growing. Well, thank you, Jenny, so much for joining us. And girls, join us in episode 6, where we'll be talking about purpose and mission as a teen girl in this crazy world.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really happy to have joined. I'll be praying for you all and pray for all you listeners too, because I know that God has a plan for you. I know that your relationship with him is going to grow stronger as your student first. That he'll give wisdom in those little areas of your life.
Yes, he will. So girls, also make sure to check us out on gemgirls.org for new episodes and blog posts.
Check us out on YouTube and Instagram too. Thanks for joining us on Gem Girls Talk.